Mic Check Podcast. This is T Word People's Champ. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining. Appreciate y'all checking us out today. Um, little Saturday, 11 o'clock Central Time. Gonna talk a little NFL, preview a little bit of boxing. Well, recap some boxing from Friday night. But other than that, we're not gonna be here too long. We're gonna give a few people an opportunity to tap in if they want to join. Had a discussion on Twitter that I thought made a really good topic. We don't really dig into the NFL too heavy, so felt like there was a good opportunity to do so today. So we're gonna do that. Y'all let me know if the music is okay. It's not too loud, and we're gonna have a good time, man. Hopefully everybody's having a great day. Um, we're gonna start with this topic. Throw it on the screen so those who join can see it. Why doesn't the NFL have a developmental league? So, and I have my opinion, so I'm interested in what everybody else thinks. On the screen for y'all. For those who don't know, if you prefer to follow via Facebook, if you follow the T's Corner, that's the name of my old podcast. I just didn't change the page name, but you can get all my content there. If I contribute any sports articles anywhere, you're gonna find them there. So be sure to jump on Facebook and like the page. So for those who aren't already aware, was a little bit of weather, second run with COVID, unfortunately, but that ain't gonna stop no show. We're gonna keep this thing popping regardless, and have a good old time. You know what I mean? It's a good Saturday. A lot of fights today. The zone has two cards, one Central Time, and then another at 7. So, or maybe it's 6, but plenty to keep up with, plenty of content to keep you entertained Saturday. Um, but yeah, so here's the question: why does the NFL have a developmental league? So, at the present time, you have two professional leagues that are not the NFL. They play in the spring. You have one that's actually starting today, and I'm going to go ahead and get this on the screen for you guys. The XFL. This one's owned by the Rock, Dwayne the Rock Johnson, um, and it's it's guys who could potentially make it to the NFL, and there's an opportunity to get some really good players here, but overall, the net doesn't really cover what type of money it takes to run the XFL. You know what I'm saying? Like as far as if the NFL was to become the, like just take over as the main source for that league. Like they attach these teams to professional teams. It wouldn't make sense financially for the NFL to do it. So looking at what we have on the docket for today, this is the XFL. Here's the first problem with why this wouldn't work as a developmental league. All right, so you have one, two, three teams in Texas. Okay, you have Arlington, you have Houston, and then you have San Antonio. Now, as we all know, there's two NFL teams in Texas. There's one in Dallas, so that's Arlington, and there's one in Houston. There's no third NFL team in Texas. All right, so you have to find somewhere else for that team to be. Then you've got the Vegas Vipers. We're not even sure that Vegas can support the Raiders. You have the Orlando Guardians. Obviously, they would have to move to Miami um, or something like that. Just move to a different city to be supported by an NFL team. St. Louis, there's no team in Missouri right now, so you'd have to relocate that team. And then you've got the Seattle Sea Dragons. Seattle actually already lost their NBA franchise, supporting another football team may not working in the DC Defenders. As we know, the Commanders in DC, that's not exactly a perfect fit right now either. Um, but they're a staple team of the NFL, so it's something work there. So you first have to figure out where this league will be supported because the thing that's going to make it thrive is attendance. And based on the numbers that I was able to find for the previous XFL season, here's a couple of factors that I will have to take into account if I wanted to put a D League team for the NFL in a particular city. Attendance is everything, and they were averaging around. There were some high weeks where the average attendance was 20,000, and then there was some low weeks where it was like 16. But averaging it to the middle, it really came out to like 18.5. The average ticket, um, the low tickets were like 40, and the high tickets were about 95. So I averaged that around 60. Um, and those numbers came out at about 3.3 million um, per home game per team. So there's four home games a week. So the league will make about $12 million in a week. Um, the player salaries per player per team is about 3 point something million because it's like 59,000 a player and there's 51 players on every roster. With the minimum is 59,000. So there's players that's going to make six figures too. But we're just going to use the average or the minimum at 51 players. That came out to about 3 point something million per team. So there's eight teams. So basically, the first few weeks of the season pays all the players' salaries, but then you've got all the other operating costs. You've got the stadium and stadium upkeep. You've got team travel. You've got the coaches. You start to factor in all these different things, and I can assure you, there's probably $1 to $2 million coaches in this league minimum. So if the NFL is looking at that, these teams, because there's not going to be a full 32 developmental teams, there's going to be either 8 or 16, and then those teams are going to kind of sort of have a priority set based on whatever teams are in the region. For example, if you were to look at the Southwest, you've got four teams that will probably pull players from the same pool. Um, I'm just going to use this as a rough thing. We're going to say the Tennessee Titans, the New Orleans Saints, the Houston Texans, and the Dallas Cowboys. So you've got two AFC and two NFC teams that will have to pull from this one team as far as access to the talent pool. This model was set up by the AAFL about 3 years ago, but that league folded really quickly. All of that to say, these are factors that you have to consider when you're trying to determine if this is a developmental league. We can't give every team their own sub team. These teams are going to have to share the talent pool. How do you manage a draft from that? You've got to do these supplemental drafts. How do you manage the distribution of talent? Um, there's so many different factors that make it really hard for it to manage. Now, the conversation I had on Twitter, the point that was brought to me was that the NBA is doing this successfully. The biggest difference is the NBA, number one, has a much smaller talent pool that is required. And number two, the operating cost is significantly less because you've got to think um, if you've got a 12-man roster in the NBA on a G League, let's say 15-man roster, and they're averaging, let's say 15,000. I mean, say 50,000 per player, right? Do the math real quick. So that's going to be $750,000 for the year that these players would make for the entire season. 750,000 salary. Let's say the attendance averages, let's just say 14,000 per game. Okay, we're going to say the average ticket is about $35. All right, so that's 490,000. So we're going to say half a mil um, per home game. Now, keep in mind these teams are going to play 2 to 3, at least two home games per week. Let's say we do like a 20, let's say a 30 game season, so everybody gets 15 home games. So we're going to say 490,000 by we say 15 home games. All right, so that's 7 million. So the salary accounts for 10%, 10% against the revenue of the team, just the players' salaries, and then the operating costs and travel, all that stuff. Let's say we add 10% for operating costs, and then another 10% for coaches' salaries and stuff like that. So you're looking at roughly 2 million and some change. They can actually run this league at a 5 million per year profit per team. So if the NFL is taking on this project, they're taking it on at a net loss. How long are they going to invest, especially if they're not pulling stars from this league? Because if a player is potentially a star, he'll never make it to the developmental league, or a star that's going to become the face of the league. He'll never make it to a developmental league. It's better for them to allow these third party leagues to do what they do and then just pluck the talent, because this current version of these third party leagues, um, they're playing in the spring. They're not even trying to go head to head with the NFL like the old USFL tried to do. So they're not battling for draft picks. They're not battling for TV time. So they're actually positioning their players to see them as a value and an asset to their careers by saying, hey, we can actually put you in a position to get drafted by the NFL or get picked up by the NFL because you're going to lay down tape. Let's say you were a college senior and you got injured, but you recovered. But for some reason, you find out your draft stock is going to be real low. Well, maybe you've had a whole season where nobody see you play, and you need to prove yourself. You're a receiver that's trying to show you can still cut and run, and your route is good, and your hands are good. So instead of going into the draft and getting picked up in the sixth or seventh round or becoming an undrafted free agent, you sign with the XFL in the spring and you go out there and you show really well. That's going to be much better than any college tape you would have put down your senior year, and it's going to be better than trying to show up to the combine and hope that you're a combine warrior and impress some general managers. Um, and if that doesn't work, you still have another opportunity in April when the USFL kicks off. So that's another opportunity for you to show that, hey, I'm a valuable asset. I'm a commodity. You guys need to rock with me. So let's go. So in my opinion, I just don't think it's feasible for the NFL to run the league, and I don't think it benefits the players enough, um, because going to college, you have so many more opportunities, and now that the NIL deals are in place, even though you may not be a six-figure NIL guy, you're going to get an education, which you're going to need at some point. And on top of that, you're going to get opportunities to play in the pros at some point. And if you don't, then you could go play in one of these third party leagues. But I don't think the NFL needs to run it. And then you start to add in these age requirements and stuff like that. You've got to be 2 years removed from high school. I believe you've got to be either turning 19 or 20 by the time you become draft eligible. So it's two and done. Um, some guys graduate at 19 because they go to the prep academy, and then 1 year later they're turning 20. Right after the draft or something like that. So they still got to wait a year. So you start to factor in all these things. I don't see a valuable reason for the NFL to invest in another league. I don't even see them having value in investing in like a European division. The cost is going to rule everything until they find a way to make it economically responsible. I just don't see that happening. A league or the I don't see them having a league or having a division overseas. It just doesn't make sense. Let's see. Um, what was? Oh yeah. So we're looking at the schedule here, and let's see. XFL. Let's go ahead and talk about them kicking off today. Um, First up, you've got the Las Vegas Vipers and the Arlington Renegades. They're going to be kicking off today at 3 p.m. Eastern, so that's 2 p.m. Central Time. Definitely mostly watching boxing. However, um, we'll be interested in the outcome of these games. Later in the day, another game taking place in Texas. The Orlando Guardians will be taking on the Houston Renegades. I'm sorry, Houston Roughnecks. That's going to be at 7:30 Central Time on ESPN. And there's some other ways to see it. Let's check out the ticket prices. Let's see. Who went the games? Let's check out some ticket prices and see what this look like in black and white. If somebody wanted to go check out the game today, let's see what it's gonna hit you for. And don't forget, it's gonna be $8 beers. You know how that go. Let's see. So, hey, look at there. All right, so you got tickets ranging from $42 up to $100. Uh, let's see if you want to get. Let's see. Uh, you're right on the 50. Well, this is what not what I expected this to do at all. All right, so a couple of seats. $84 plus fees. Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. Um, so for less than $200, you could get yourself in the building, or right at $200, you could get yourself in there and get you some really good seats on the home side. Let's see what this stadium is. Let's check out this area over here. Hey, it's the spring. I mean, it's kind of cold. I don't think they're gonna have good attendance because it's really cold here in Texas, like 30s, and that's just not how we roll on this side of the map. So I don't know about that. Uh, this is really slow. Let's see if I can get over there. But that being said, those two games are going to kick off today, and then of course you've got two games on Sunday, um, which should be pretty good. Let's see, you've got the St. Louis Battlehawks and the San Antonio Brahmas. So another game in Texas. That one's going to be at 2 p.m. on ABC. So good network deal. The Rock is doing this thing, using his influence to get his games on TV. And then you've got the Seattle Sea Dragons against the DC Defenders. That's going to be on ESPN at 7 p.m. on Sunday. So it doesn't say ESPN Plus or whatever, but uh, maybe if you have ESPN Plus, you can catch them. I know for sure I don't have either one of those channels. So I get to see these games, try to catch them on like a rebroadcast or something like that. But yeah, XFL. I don't know, man. Um, we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out for sure. I just don't think that a D league for the NFL would work. And then of course you got the USFL coming up in April. I believe they kick off around the 16th, so we'll kind of recap some of that whenever that time comes. So let's go ahead and get into some boxing. And let's see, we had a card on last night. It was a showbox card. There was actually two cards yesterday, but I only called one of them. The showbox card came around 8 p.m. Central Time. And wow, there's a boxing card going on right now in Germany. Started at 9:50 a.m. and it's on the zone. Surprisingly, I did not know that. Uh, yeah. Hmm. Let's see who this is. You have Felix Stern and Sukru Alte. This is on the zone as we speak. So cool beans. Don't know about them, so I'm gonna just keep it moving. Okay, so Showbox card Friday, February 17th featured Adrill Holmes versus Ishmael Villarreal, which ended in a split decision victory for Adrill Holmes. Um, I had it about the same, even though I had it a little bit further apart. In fact, I actually had a unanimous decision, but um, I had um, I had Holmes winning, but just I had him winning like 6-4. Like I had it closer than the final scores. Um, Final scores ended up 97, 97, 93, 96, 94, 98, 92. My bad. They gave him a unanimous decision. Um, but these cards were wild. 98, 92. There's no way. I looked at some of the unofficial scoring, and they actually had where Holmes was they basically gave Holmes like the first 5 rounds, and I thought that it was back and forth for the beginning of the fight. It just didn't make sense. So I'm not sure how they came up with those results, but they still got it right overall because the right person did get picked late in the fight. Villarreal seemed to fade. He had no really good. He had no strategy, um, and he was just kind of winging shots. He came in with 12 wins, 8 by knockout. So he started to kind of revert to tactics that would lean towards power, and it just didn't work out for him. Boxing Gyms, what up, yo? Just talking about this fight card from last night. Was talking about a little bit of NFL. Why don't the NFL have a developmental league? Uh, like I told you yesterday, these streams don't get full, so ain't nobody here. But yeah, so Villarreal seemed not to have a strategy at some point early on in the fight. He had some success. He actually was switching his stance while moving into range, and it was effective to land an overhand. But once Holmes made an adjustment, he started catching him with the jab coming in. He did back himself into the ropes a lot, but he's catching him with the jab coming in, and eventually he was able to stall that particular attack. And it seems like Villarreal couldn't come up with anything else that was effective. I didn't really see a lot of strategy, use of footwork or anything like that. He just kind of put himself in harm's way, and then he just stood there and took punishment. He really didn't move enough to at least create different angles or create something to give himself an opportunity to get back into the fight. But I did think it was a little back and forth early on. I didn't see any guy separate themselves. I saw them both do a couple things well to offset their opponent, and then I saw them both do some things that put them in harm's way unnecessarily. So it was just raw. Looked like a little bit of raw talent on display. Yes, sir. Appreciate that, man. I appreciate you popping in, dropping comment on me, all that good stuff. I'm definitely keep grinding, um, because it still got to sound good on the replay whenever they find it. So, but yeah, that was the main event on the fight. But actually, the co-main probably was a little bit more competitive, even though it had a rock'em sock'em feel to it. Um, Michel Lopez and Edward Vasquez. Um, they just kind of went toe to toe for much of the fight. I saw them both kind of hurt each other at different points in the fight. Can't say that I gave it a whole lot of detailed attention, so can't really analyze it from that perspective. But I can say that they both brought the fight. They both came to put their hands on each other, and they did that. Um, and I think the judges got it right. They both gave a valiant effort, and that's the best that you could ask for. Uh, Kurt Scobie and John Manu, if I'm not mistaken, this is the one where Scobie just overwhelmed his opponent, and it just it wasn't a good fight. If that's the one I'm thinking of, I saw a couple different matches yesterday. But before I get up out of here, I got a couple minutes left. Last one I'm gonna talk about is there was some bare knuckle boxing on while I was waiting for the fights to start. I went to YouTube, and Greg Hardy fought, Austin Trout fought, and the main event, I'm gonna have to pull up the screen and get his name up, but that's the whole reason I look for it. I had seen a teaser on Twitter, and I was like, it was like a champion, and he was just overwhelming all his opponents. So I was like, man, is this just like a sizzle reel, or is this dude really just going in there and just mowing people down? And apparently, that's just what he does. I don't know how many people listening have ever watched WWE, WCW, whatever. Way back in the day, there's a wrestler they brought out, Goldberg. He would come in and he would just flatten his opponents in like 10, 15 seconds and then just run out the ring, basically. That's kind of how this guy looked, but I know this isn't staged and scripted. So I was interested, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna check it out. And I just forgot to go back for the main event, but I watched some of the qualifying matches for the prelims, and I mean, there's some strategy to it. You would think it's just dudes throwing punches, but there were fights where the guys were really trying to set up punches. They were throwing a combination. It's just more impactful because there's no gloves. You have to give credit to the level of toughness that it takes to get in there and basically get near bare knuckles put on your face. Um, but I saw some good shots. I saw some guys use body work, which kind of surprised me because you would think it's just try to concuss your opponent and get him to quit. There were a couple fights where there was just some overwhelming. It seems like it's a sport where if your if your intent is just to bring pressure, you're probably going to be more successful until you run up against somebody who has the exact same intent. If you're somebody who's a little bit more passive, it may not be the way to go for you simply because you're probably going to run against 50% of the guys who just want to go in there and let their hands go. They're going to punch you to the body, punch you in the neck, punch you in the ribs, and then they're going to go upstairs and crack you across the temple. The guys who were able to execute that type of strategy really um, just seemed to already have an advantage, a mental advantage. Like they came in for war. They had really aggressive walk-ins and stuff like that. So, but Austin Trout won this match, and if you look at him versus his opponent after the fight, one guy looked like he wasn't in the fight, and the other guy did. So he beat his opponent up, and then Greg Hardy got knocked out. So I was looking at the odds. They put the odds up on the screen before the card started, and Greg Hardy was like a minus 700 or something like that. So his opponent, he had some really good odds if you picked him like plus 6 or plus 800, something crazy like that. But the guy ended up knocking Greg Hardy out. So I thought that was interesting. And if anybody knows, Greg Hardy a couple months ago fought Hasim Rahman Jr. in one of those. It wasn't an exhibition match; it was actually official, but it was his pro debut in boxing, and he actually beat Hasim Rahman Jr. up. But there's 100-pound difference. I don't even know how it got sanctioned, but anyway, um, that wasn't supposed to be the opponent that Rockman had, but he ended up taking on Hardy anyway, short notice, and he took his lumps for it. All of that to say, Hardy has been in a MMA league, and he had a record of I think like 8-7, so he wasn't that successful, but he was competitive. He gave some good fights, and he's used his stature to his advantage. But he got into this bare knuckle, and I believe this was his debut, and he got KO'd in his first fight. So I mean, apparently he's an ex football player. Obviously, he likes contact. He enjoys the violence of it because he went from a violent sport. Unfortunately, he does have some history with some domestic violence accusations. So maybe these things are his outlet to keep his hands to himself in normal life. So if that's why he's doing this, because he's not really been that successful at it, but if he's doing it because it's like therapy, keeping him from doing it in his personal life, kudos to him. But if he really wants to go somewhere with it, I think he's got to work on his conditioning and then develop his skill set. And maybe it can go somewhere where, he's one of the guys they call up and they'll pay him a lot of money to do some bare knuckle exhibitions or whatever the case may be. But I'm gonna leave it right there, y'all. I'm gonna get ready for these other streams that are gonna be coming up. He's already on the screen, so I'm gonna throw a shout out there. Y'all go ahead and subscribe to Boxing Gym's film study. If you're into boxing and you want the real knowledge, you don't want the real husbands of boxing type of stuff, no drama. You just want all the facts. You want the analysis of what's going on in the ring. Boxing Gym Film Study is a place to go. So go on over there and subscribe to the channel. Tell him T sent you. It ain't gonna get you nothing free or nothing, but he'll probably appreciate the shout out. But that being said, man, I do appreciate all those who listen live and then those who listen on the replay. This has been the Mike Check Podcast. I am T Word, the People's Champ. I'm exiting the booth. Until the next time, peace.